Welcome to The Individual Animal, a podcast about dogs, people, and animal sheltering. I'm your host, Nikki, here with my co-host, Bernice. How you doing today, Bernice?
I'm doing great, Nikki. How are you?
I'm good. I just got back from sunny Florida. I'm glad to be back, but I am missing the t-shirt and short weather that I left behind.
Sure. Love the rain.
Yeah. But I was at FACA, which is now, so it was FACA, but now it's FAPAA. I think it's Florida Animal Protection and Advocacy Association. I'm gonna have to double check that, but they're rebranding, and I love it.
I didn't realize. That's great.
Yeah, but that was great. I got to talk about language and removing breed labels. Met some really great folks, got some really great connections. And I was talking to somebody after the presentation. She just had a few questions for me. She was like, I get it. Like, I think that we should be removing breed labels, but then I feel like once we do that, we have no information for our adopters. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she was like, well, we don't have a huge behavior team at our shelter, so I feel like we don't have a ton of behavior information about our dogs. And then when we don't have breed label information, and I just feel like we don't have anything to offer them, and we went and had a larger conversation about that and about how it's important to be honest and give the information that you have and not the information that you think that you know. But then she had made a comment about struggle with trying to get dogs to rescues and transports, and how rescues and transports are always asking for if dogs are good with other dogs in order to be transported to their facility, which I can understand being a hard thing to know for all of your dogs.
Sure. I think that's a nice intro to what we're going to talk about with our next guest, because playgroups are important and helpful in those situations. I also, as I'm listening to you talk, going back and listening to what we talked to Janice and Amy separately about, is there is a lot of information that can be gathered as soon as you start touching an animal. You don't need behavior experts to have that information. Someone leashed the dog up, someone took the dog out, and I think that we're sort of ignoring all of that information because we think we need a special test or a special person, and we don't.
Right. Absolutely. And playgroups is just one aspect of that, right? You can learn so much about, with vets and with the dogs going to the vet and the dog just hanging out with volunteers.
Right.
And going for walks and things like that. I don't know what it is about wanting to give adopters information that you don't have.
Right. You give them the information you do have. And you do the best you can.
Yeah.
But you don't make stuff up. That's worse.
Right. Yeah. Oh, and certainly she wasn't saying that. I'm not trying to pick on this singular person. I think it just gave me sort of a pause of like, okay, this is the first time anybody's ever come up to me with that concern. I know how much rescues are asking for that kind of stuff. They want to know if the dogs are going to fit into their environment or into their foster home, so I can understand where they're coming from as well.
Right. And we do the same thing on our end, right? Because if the dogs can all exist together, we can have more of them.
Yes. And then we do the same thing, and then we get dogs that sometimes don't get along with each other. So there's that too.
Yeah.
Like having all that information.
Yeah, there is that too.
Isn't always what is actually
As
to be true in a different environment, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But playgroups are awesome. And if you listen to Amy Sadler's podcast we did with her a few weeks back, she mentioned Amanda from Cuyahoga County Animal Shelter in Ohio and how she saw Dogs Play for Life, and she went back and did all these amazing things. I think we put the data in her Amy's show notes, but I'll put them in these ones too. Just the improvements that happened in the shelter after Amanda went back and implemented playgroups at our shelter. So we wanted to talk to her about her experience with that. So that's coming up. Amanda is the behavior coordinator there. And then you'll also hear Mindy, who is Amanda's director. She was also in the room as well. So she chimes in a little bit also. So it was really great to talk to them and hear, their experience on the effect that DPFL had on their organization and playgroups. And also, one thing I really loved about this episode is something that we're trying to do here at the Individual Animal is reach out to folks at individual shelters across the country and hear what they're up to and hear how things like these shelter consulting programs have impacted them, or how they've learned even or at conferences or webinars or things that they've been able to take back to their shelter, or just like aha ideas that you guys are implementing at your shelters. We would love to hear more about what you're doing across the country. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I kind of want to, I have a thing, please, please email us and or fill out. We have a simple little form you can fill out, or you can leave us a voicemail and tell us what you've got going on, because we think it'd be great to hear from a whole bunch of you from all across the country.
Great.
All right. Well, let's get into it. I hope you enjoy. All right. Let's jump right into it. You went to Amy's Playgroup program, or you went somewhere else, right? Did they come to your organization?
So actually, we're a little different. Way back in 2015, we attended our first seminar as an organization at a partner shelter that was local to us. We came back. And we actually started playgroups pretty quickly. I think it took us about a month to get like the logistics down, but we started doing like 3 days a week at that time. It was definitely different than how it was today. Our groups were definitely much smaller, but we were able to get a lot of dogs into playgroups that we originally had thought that like, there's no way these dogs are going to get in there. From then, we went back and we actually got to learn from Amy's team again. They came back to City Dogs in Cleveland because they had seen that we're taking dogs from your shelter. We're putting them in playgroups. These are dogs that you thought weren't good with our dogs and getting them successfully in there. So even though we were doing it at a smaller scale, they came back to City Dogs. They started doing it 6 to 7 days a week. And we're like, okay, if they're doing it 6 to 7 days a week, we've been only doing 3. We're just going to go and gun how, and we're going to just get in there and we're going to start doing playgroups 7 days a week. At that time, nobody had been to our shelter from Dogs Playing for Life. We'd only learned from them satellite, like remotely, going to like the seminars, the playgroup seminars that they host across the country. But we learned a lot. Did we feel like we knew anything or even remotely what we feel like we know today? Definitely not. Finally, 2 years later, they actually got a grant. I think it was from Kenneth Scott Foundation, and they came back to Cleveland for almost a month, and they spent time at our shelter and the other Cleveland shelters as well. And that's when the first time Amy actually came to us. And she was like, you guys are doing a great job. We needed a lot of work with helping these more difficult dogs in. We were struggling with some stuff like procedurally, but that was the first time they actually came to us. And she said we were one of the first shelters to ever, across the country, to actually go through and actually develop a full-blown playgroup program from never showing up at our shelter. And we're just like, we want to do it. We had seen this positive things happen from that first shelter. We had I think it was an example. We had a puppy that was really under-socialized. And when Amy and team were at that first shelter we went to, they said, we're looking for some more difficult dogs to try to work into this program. And we're like, oh, we have one. This is the puppy that was going after multiple litter mates. It was having problems with other dogs, meet and greets here. And they brought that dog over there. They got that on the playgroups. And that dog actually was adopted really quickly. And we're like, if we can see that success in 4 days in a playgroup, what could we do if we made this like a bigger scale implementation in our shelter? So
before you attended your first Dog Play for Life type seminar, were you guys doing playgroups at all at your organization?
We did maybe like some pair play, or like little dogs. We were comfortable doing like little dogs, throwing them on the ground, let them play together. But maybe pair play, that was it. We had never thought about ever putting big groups of dogs together. It was something that was just like, why would you do that? That's not safe. All of our meet and greets were done on leash. Dogs, there was so much procedural change that we changed after we started playgroups that I could just keep talking about, like, game changer. It's changed everything about our shelter. We originally had all dogs during like their stray holds, for example, were never allowed out of the cages except to meet with a doctor. So they couldn't go for walks. They couldn't go to playgroup. So basically a dog would be sitting in its cage for a minimum of 4 to 5 days, if that's a state mandated hold, to up to over 2 weeks if it had a license. They didn't go out potty. They stayed, if they came out of their cage, they got tied to a rail. They weren't brought back in. After Amy's team, she's like, okay, you guys are doing all this great stuff for your dogs that are off stray hold, but what about enriching these dogs that are still on stray hold? And we went there and we're like, okay, why are we doing this? Is there a real reason behind it? Is it legalities? It's whatever. And we're like, no, we need to enrich these dogs that are in our care. So we stopped tying dogs to the rail for cleaning. Every dog went to playgroup, went out for potties during morning cleaning. So that was probably one of the biggest changes we made. And so within a 2-hour period every morning, every dog is either gone to playgroup, gone out to a yard for potty, or gone for a walk. So that's our whole population of about 110 dogs. So it's quite a team effort. It's a little bit controlled chaos in the morning, but it really changed our dogs, like their overall arousal. If you go through our kennel after 10:30 when we go to open, the kennel is pretty much quiet. You might just get that one dog that's barking and be a little annoying and jumping and be a little crazy. But other than that, the kennel is silent. The dogs are like relaxed. They got what they needed, be it a potty break or they got to go run like crazy hooligans out in the play yard. So it's really changed a lot about how we've done stuff.
What kind of pushback did you get from your colleagues? Was there any, or was like, did you just go back there and everybody was like, yes, we're doing this? She's shaking her head.
Yeah, thought we were pretty crazy. I saw it, and the first time I saw it at the partner shelter was like, I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I just want to go back there and put all the dogs together. Yes, there's a lot more science to this, and you guys know that. We don't just throw all the dogs together. But I'm like, this is amazing. If we can get all these dogs out and let them play, and it'll be so much crazier, like, they'll be quieter. But yeah, a lot of the staff that have been here a long time, our medical team, especially in the beginning, was very against it because who's going to be the one if all these massive fights happen? Is going to be suturing up all these dogs and paying the medical bills. Who's going to be like, if there's for example, disease outbreak, if they're going to have to handle that, it'd be more workload for them. And we have a very small medical team. It's just our vet tech, medical supervisor, and then we have a part-time veterinarian that comes in and out. So that's a lot of work for them on top of their order workload. So I could understand that. A lot of our staff was definitely hesitant about getting involved in playgroups originally. But when we started doing it, even at that small scale, people started seeing, and the volunteers especially, were like, oh my God, this is amazing. The dogs were so much happier after they had their playgroup in the afternoon, which is when we originally started, which is in the afternoon. They'd go back to their kennels and everybody would just be laying out quietly in their kennels. But yeah, there definitely was pushback. And I will tell you, I'm the person that once I get something, be a little bit of playgroup, I want more of it. Or anything that's going to better the dog's lives in general. So if I get a little bit, I'm going to ask for a little more, ask for a little more. I'm not the person that's like, oh, we got playgroups 3 days a week. Okay, that's it. Our dogs are done. No more enrichment. They got everything they need. No, they need more. And so our programs have just grown and grown and grown to benefit our dogs. We do enrichment now for our dogs in kennel. So much stuff. But yes, every step of the way, there's always been pushback. And it's either been staff. I'm not saying staff. They do, everybody starts to embrace stuff, but staff, volunteers. When we did some procedural changes, definitely some of our volunteers, even for a while there, had some pushback. They weren't comfortable. And this was more our fancy footwork. We've gone to the second stage with Dogs Playing for Life, with trying to do the kennel routines, fancy footwork. For all these years, we were like, do not go in the cage. It's dangerous. Do not go in the cage. Do not go in the cage. They come out, they're like, guess what, guys? We're going in the cages. And some of the volunteers definitely were nervous by that. And we had some volunteers step away because they truly felt it was unsafe, even though all our statistics have shown exactly the opposite. When you have that consistency in the handling, be it for them knowing they're going to playgroup and what they're expected to do, put their forepaws on the floor and then leave, or if they are expected to their bed routine, loose leash walking, they actually are less stressed and they understand what's expected of them. Some people thought exactly the opposite. They thought it was going to be a big free-for-all hooligan and we're going to have a bunch of dog bites. And as you guys saw from the statistics, it was exactly the opposite. So,
yes, 62% decrease in dog bites on those statistics that they sent over. Yeah. That's pretty.
Yeah. So one of the things we really saw, the reason they decreased is, we talked about this earlier, but during cleaning, all of our dogs were tied to the wall during cleaning. It was very behavioral deteriorating, especially have 2 reactive dogs tied next to each other down the rail. But also when you have a dog, you have to walk past these dogs to go to its kennel to go back. You guys can guess when bites happen. Dogs, people are in between dogs. And so it was just like, but again, our shelter has been here for 22 years at this current facility. And it's always been that way. That's how it was done. And it was just like, okay, this is the way it's done. Dogs get tied out for cleaning. Then they go back into their kennels. And it's just the way, again, we all came in. Our management changed just a couple of years before our Playgroup. Like, there was a huge shift. And so I think just as much as anything, they embraced the change. And they were like, we can do something better. And so when we started getting the dogs out to Playgroup during cleaning or to like relieve themselves in the play yard, that's probably when we saw the biggest decrease in bites, especially on the staff, because you weren't putting yourself at risk. And it's funny, we're less at risk with all these dogs together and letting them play than we were just tying them to the wall and putting them back in their cages. So it sounds exactly the opposite of what it should be, but that's
great. That's great. Did you do anything special to get your medical team on board? I know that's a question that a lot of folks have when we're dealing with them, is our medical team doesn't want to.
Yeah, exactly. I will tell you, in the beginning, they were very against it. But when they started to see the successes, that's a big word, of like the little things that were happening, especially with the dogs that were their favorites, like their medical dogs that started to, like, that were long-term dogs that may have had a medical issue and they were isolated. For example, they had a broken leg. They couldn't participate in Playgroup. They were isolated for a long time. They started to display kennel stress. And they were really worried about those dogs having positive outcomes. And when those dogs get into Playgroup and their stress levels go down, they start to play with their dogs. And I think when they started to see their dogs that were their favorite dogs make those positive changes, it was kind of like, okay, well, there's something good here. And we're definitely not seeing all these disease outbreaks and all these, and it doesn't mean we don't have something happen. You guys all know that.
Of course.
There's an altercation here or there that needs them to help with some suturing, or we have to go to a vet trip. But it's the exception. It's not the rule. It's what everybody thought it was going to be. They thought it was going to be this big free-for-all where everybody's going to die and all the dogs are going to need sutured up and it was going to be horrible. It wasn't that. And with time, and I will tell you, it took years. In the beginning, I was just like, medical hates Playgroup. But they did. They started to like it. They started to embrace it just like the rest of the team did. And I will tell you, it's just so much of our culture now as a team. If we didn't have Playgroup during cleaning, and on those mornings, for example, like I would tell you, maybe it's one day a year now. Like we may not be able to Playgroup outside, for example, or we have to run at a lower scale in our garage. Everybody's like, oh, it just doesn't make it as easy to run our cleaning process because it's so part of how we run everything now. That if we don't have it or we have to have it at a smaller scale, it makes it so much more difficult for them to do their jobs at the level they're able to do their jobs. So we kind of rely on each other a lot.
Do the volunteers do most of the Playgroups there?
So we have one leader, and the leader can be a staff member or a volunteer. I run myself about 4 days a week Playgroup. And then the other days, it can be either a staff leading or a volunteer leading. But we allow both staff and volunteers to lead and assist. Of course, we're not going to put somebody right away and be like, congratulations, you're leading Playgroup. We start them as runners, just getting dogs and starting to see what's going on, going in and out of the yard. Same thing with staff. If staff are going to help the Playgroup, they start with running dogs, and then we get them assisting, so getting them in that yard, getting them experience. Once they've seen kind of like how we run things. And then once they're comfortable with assisting, then we'll like start pushing them and letting them like kind of like pseudo lead, like run the group, and I'll step back and just kind of like help you if you do need help. But yeah, staff and volunteers both can lead groups. And that's the only way we're able to run groups 7 days a week. And we run on holidays, even on days we're closed. On all our holidays, it's volunteer only. So our volunteers step up to the plate and they do the Playgroups on volunteer, always on holidays. And there's a couple days a week as well that sometimes we may not have a staff member available, so volunteers will lead.
Yeah, one of the stats they sent was 176% increase in your volunteer hours.
Oh, yeah, it did.
That's a huge,
huge increase
in volunteer hours. So that's great.
That have reached out, like even to show interest in like volunteering once they started seeing our social media. We post on social media for our like Playgroups, just like it's cool video. They're cute videos. We try to get it in our main feeds, like both on our Instagram or TikTok, all that kind of stuff, multiple times a week. But then we also do it in our stories. And I will tell you the amount of interactions those posts get. People love it. And we get a lot of volunteers that are interested in volunteering specifically. Oh, I heard you guys do Playgroup. That's so cool. Even if they don't want to participate directly in Playgroup, they love the stuff that we're doing. And they've come from other shelters. And we don't steal them. But they're very interested in how much we're trying to do for our dogs, both behaviorally and for enrichment to get here. And I'm like, oh, we love you guys. We don't want to steal you, but thanks for coming and helping us out.
That's great.
Well, I'm glad that everybody's on board and you're doing all 7 days a week. You said 7 days a week.
We do 7 days a week.
I just want to say that one more time.
And I will tell you,
that's incredible.
Like we're running 7 days a week, morning for cleaning, but we also are running. For example, there are days, just like everybody knows, there's been a huge spike in our population. It just normally would be down at this time of year. We're pretty much at 100% capacity. So even with having 10 to 12 volunteers walking dogs, it's not enough. So we actually been running an afternoon playgroup too, to try to like assist with getting some more of these dogs out of their cages. So they're getting those 3 at least walks a day, to go potty. Without playgroup, a lot of times, like it would be nearly impossible. When they have 120 dogs, 10 people, like that's expecting you to get 10 dogs out in 2 hours, pretty much impossible. So, but go ahead. I'm sorry. I may have interrupted you a little bit.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. I was just going to ask if you had any stories that really stick out with dogs that transform it into playgroup and how that affected the staff.
Oh, there's so many. There was one we actually submitted for a grant.
Sorry, I did put you on the spot there.
Yeah, no, you're fine. His name was Franklin. He was actually a medical dog. That's why medical decided they liked playgroups. This was a while ago, but he was in medical. I can't remember the injury he had, but it was, again, it sidelined him for a long time, and he started to play some very concerning. He was leash reactive, very reactive, all the things you don't want to see in a dog. And at that time, I would say we were still pretty newer to playgroups. This would have been at least 5 years ago. And we're like, should we do this? Like, so I brought one of my team members. I'm like, yeah, let's just try. What the heck? We muzzled him up, and he came into playgroup, and he ended up, like, he did a play bow almost immediately. But he was charged in the front of the barrier. I mean, he would have been a dog that you'd be like, a little iffy about that. Should we bring you in? And as soon as he came in, he did one lap with zoomies, play bowed, and then just let it loose. Like, and from then on, pulled the muzzle right off. He joined playgroup. He became a rock star. He loved other dogs, and he actually was placed in a home with multiple dogs. So, and he's doing good. They gave us an update, like I think a year later, and they said he was still doing awesome. They actually take him to dog parks, that kind of stuff. So we ended up being like that type of social rock star dog. He had some kennel stress that caused problems. There's so many. We've had dogs that come in that you can't touch. It's extremely fearful. And sometimes it's like, yeah, we can't get these dogs out. We may have gotten a vaccine in them, but that's about all we could have done. And we just give them a playgroup, and within like 2 to 3 days, we see those transformations. I love pulling those dogs from some of our partner shelters, our fearful dogs, because our team really does an awesome job with them. You see these dogs going from being like pancake dogs, laying on the ground, refusing to walk, to they're playing their dogs within 3 days. We would never have seen that before playgroups. I mean, these are dogs that would probably have taken us weeks to get out of their cages. And sometimes we just have to get them there, no matter how angry they are. And as soon as they get there, it's like, they're like, oh my God, this isn't such a bad place. And you see them even by day 2, like they're a little better. And by day 3, it's like normal. You'll see the dogs acting like normal dogs. Like nothing ever happened. And is every dog 3 days? No, but like it's dog after dog after dog that you see that's happened again and again. There was one I just posted on my TikTok that was a dog that was, again, really, really, really leash reactive. Very challenging dog. And we brought him in on muzzle. We're like, this is going to be a fit. And still to this day, we still doubt ourselves. And it's like, bring it to the game. We're like, this isn't going to go great. Let's muzzle you. I think it's going to go poor, but let's try anyways. And the dog literally came in, walked up to their dog, play bowed. And again, it was just like full throw. And it was just all frustration. The dog just didn't know. And I'm sure it had never been socialized with a young dog, and it just needed that experience. But it was like, it's just like everyone you see is, I would say the transformations, and the dogs were able to have positive outcomes now because of playgroup are just, the dog aggressive dogs that are make tough decisions about are so like skim and far between than I would say even 8 years ago. It was like, I remember hearing like, this dog is dog aggressive, we can't work with it. This dog is dog aggressive, you can't work with it. This dog is dog aggressive. But like, it's like, if you say a dog is dog aggressive, it's the outlier. It's that maybe 1% of dogs that come through our shelter. It's not 10 to 15% that we thought originally.
And I have to tag on to that. That's not to say we're not getting difficult dogs. Oh, thanks. We're a municipal shelter and we can't turn dogs away. So there's a lot of power in that those dogs are now the outliers. And so when we're like, hey, this dog is showing some really, or Amanda will say some really offensive aggression, it's exceptional and it stands out to us. Whereas years ago, we would be like, this dog, like she said, is aggressive. This dog is aggressive. And that's really the power of Playgroup, because the dogs do something we can't do. They help each other in a way that we never can. And so I know Amy always talks about that, the power of Playgroup, and it really exists.
Did it change the way you thought about a dog's behavior? So if you, before Playgroups, you saw a dog's behavior in a kennel, and then after Playgroups, if you saw a dog's behavior in a kennel, like, did you think about it differently?
Oh, totally. We still are able to like walk through the kennel and be like, okay, that one looks like a really socially wiggly dog. Like, it'll be one of our helper dogs or our social dogs. I even do that before. I haven't been here for a couple of days. I'll do a quick walk through the kennel in the morning to see who we got in, our new bazillions of faces, just to get an idea of who I might be working with that day. But I will tell you, just because a dog is dog reactive in the kennel or even walking to Playgroup, I may still adopt myself again, and we may still start that dog in a smaller group. But to me, that doesn't mean anything. Like, that just may be a dog I tag to be like, okay, that one may be a one-on-one assessment or one-on-two assessment, a small group assessment versus bringing him right into a bigger group. But again, like every dog, I know you guys say this, every dog is an individual, but it's the truth. Every dog is an individual, and you can't say like the one size fits all. Just because he's leash reactive doesn't mean he's dog aggressive. Just because he's very reactive doesn't mean he's dog aggressive. And then maybe leash reactive, very reactive, and wonderful with our dogs. It could be like maybe more selective, but it's figuring out what that dog needs to succeed. And some of those dogs that may be leash reactive, very reactive, well, we go females or males, but we're going to find a place for them. I will tell you, like, of our population right now, we have about 100 dogs, I'd say right now in our care. Of that, we say 2 do not enjoy Playgroup. And can they be around our dogs? Yes. Do they enjoy Playgroup? It's not fulfilling to them. But other than that, so 98 dogs enjoy Playgroup so 2 approximately of all our dogs don't like Playgroup. So I think it's just finding out what that dog needs and finding a successful match. And sometimes it may be, oh, he only really gets along with this one dog. But most of the time, they're much more social than we originally thought.
Yeah, and you have other enrichment programs for the dogs too, right? You were saying earlier?
Yeah, we have both, of course, our dog walking program just to get the dogs out of their kennels. And then we also do Kongs. And then we also do during the day, we have we have Frisbees during the day, 3 days a week, just as something at midday to give them a break day. And then in the evenings, on the days we don't have Frisbees, we do popsicles, which are just like big frozen things on a stick. The dogs love them. Peanut butter. We do peanut butter balls a lot of times for the dogs, like that we'll hang them from the jelly balls from the ceiling of the cage. So the dogs keep that are really high arousal or really amped up. We'll like smear peanut butter all over them and keeps them busy for like an hour. So they're like busy, like try and push this all out of their cage.
That's great.
So we try to be creative. Our drains are a little difficult to do a lot of cardboard enrichment. So everything we do have to do meltable, or like it can't go down the drains the way our drains are. Like they just will block because it's we didn't choose how our building was designed, but
right.
Anything that way like can be pulled apart can go right to the drains and immediately plug the drains. So we have to be really melted or can't fit in the drains. So we try to do like I said, the Kongs, popsicles, Frisbees, anything like that can hang or melt.
Yeah. It's a common problem, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I will tell you the enrichment, like, it's just so funny. Like each thing we've done to add to the dogs, before it was just like maybe we had those dogs out for one walk a day. We were happy. They got their one walk. Now it's like, if we don't get those dogs out for 3 times a day, we're disappointed. Like we just didn't do our job today. And it's like, it's just so funny how a dynamic can shift when you have like, again, our team, the same thing, like our whole staff team, they're super like, if we didn't get the dogs out, okay, time to go walking. It's 4:00. We leave at 4. We have to get all these dogs out. Everybody hasn't been out. We're not leaving. And we don't leave as a team. This means like supervisors, staff, and a lot of times volunteers stay too until we get every dog out. Like every dog has to have gotten out for at least that second walk minimum. But normally we just a third walk too. So our goal is 3. We'll never leave until every dog's had 2.
Wow, that's amazing. And I would imagine you're being able to see and learn so much more about the dog's personalities, right? I know one of the stats is a 20% increase in adoption rates, which is huge. It's a huge number. That's amazing.
Totally. That's what we do every day. Our Playgroup notes go out. And because of that, we're going to be like, this dog, we know this dog is social. We know this dog does better with females, does better with males. And so we're able to let dog comes in to meet our dogs. We can see kind of how their play style looks, and we can make recommendations that are actually appropriate recommendations, not based on how the dogs look, to who might be a good fit for that dog in the household. And guess what? When you're making good recommendations, because we know the dogs better because of Playgroups, those dogs aren't coming back because we're setting you up for success right in the beginning. And as long as people are open to how a dog looks, and you guys know this, the ones that sit here longer, those short-coated, big-headed, blocky-headed dogs, if there's dogs social, they're good with small dogs, they're good with females, males, possibly like cats. They're going to get adopted much quicker than a dog that's more selective. So making sure they're social and are having good notes about what's going to set up for success, what type of home is going to set them up for success, has really allowed a lot of our dogs to stay in their homes, not come back, and more to leave. So it's wonderful.
Nice.
How do you guys keep track of all those notes?
It's they take a time every day. So we actually do an email every day. We use Pet Point, but we have a little sheet that we mark any significant incidences, but whoever is the leader for the day is responsible for sending an email out. We do the whole team, and anybody volunteer-wise that is in the Playgroup program gets those notes daily. So a lot of the notes will stay pretty similar, especially if a dog isn't doing anything different, but we can mark through these significant incidents, if there's any dogs that decide they just don't like each other. So the stuff is, and we can then easily search in our email and be like, pull the dog's name, for example, Stiletto. I can say, oh, Stiletto didn't like Alvin, but did great with everybody else. So we just want to make sure we're not putting those two together, or if we are going to try it again, we're going to use discretion when we do it. But that way, everybody, both the staff at the front desk who's doing adoption counseling, or like our medical team, anybody can look up there and say like, hey, how are these dogs doing? Or just search a dog's name and be like, oh, he's social, rough and rowdy. So we want to look for a more active home, probably not like a bunch of old dogs or hanging out well. So that's how we share them. Oh, and then we also have anybody that's in our Playgroup program directly. So our volunteers and most of our staff have joined it too. And we share like successes, little cute videos of dogs that were like, oh, this dog's doing really good now. He was super selective. And so so we know just how they're going. And it's a little more than just the typing notes every day. And so it's just cute success stories. And they also can communicate as well. Like, from able to come in. So another volunteer can be like, oh, I can come in tomorrow. That's not a big deal. So it's worked really good about like team building, but also communication. But yeah, it's a lot, but it's definitely helped our team with knowing the dogs a little better. If there's anything that's of course notable, of course we're going to put it in the dog's file too, if it's super social or super selective, one or the other. But for the most part, it's just the email that goes out to everybody and then our Facebook page.
Do you allow people to come that are at other organizations come and like watch your Playgroups now that you guys are like the masters of it at this point?
That actually is something that's awesome you say that. That first shelter that we went to, that we saw Amy present at, I think it was Amy and Cody that was there. Yes, they have actually come over multiple times. We've had other shelters from out of county come to see our Playgroup program. We're still trying to get that shelter to run Playgroups daily. I'm like, guys, you don't understand how much it's done for the dogs and like the problems that they're having, that they're wanting behavioral help with. I'm like, I promise you, 90% of them will be solved if you can just get these dogs playing. I'm not saying there's not going to be still that 10% they can need additional work with on leash reactivity or whatever the dog's problem is, but just getting them out of their kennels and letting them be dogs is going to solve the problem. But it's just confidence boost. But yes, we've had multiple shelters. I'd say at least 4 or 5 have come to see our Playgroup program. And we also, because the way our building is kind of designed, and of course this part we didn't design, but our play yards actually line up right with a big glass window to our main kennel. So people, like when we're still running Playgroups, when we're open, can watch the Playgroups from inside the kennel. So when it's freezing cold and we're freezing, they get to be inside warm and watch the Playgroups and the dogs playing. And especially it's beneficial when in the afternoon, when we were doing like the afternoon Playgroups, we normally do our social rock stars at that time anyways. And they can sit there and watch, and you just see people. And it's always so funny when you look up and like, I feel like an animal in a cage, literally. Just everybody's just watching you. They love it. But people love it. But yes, we've had multiple shelters come, and we're still, I said that first shelter, we're still trying to empower to get them Playgroups going. They're just, some people just struggle. I think it's just confidence. And it's like, same thing here. It's like, there has to be somebody that has a level of confidence, or like, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it, and you'll learn from your mistakes. We all make mistakes. Believe me, we've all done stuff. We're like, why did we do that? But we've learned from them. We've become like, I would say like, we've become better. We've like learned from every mistake that we've made along the way. We're like, why didn't we have drive lines on dogs that are brand new? Okay, when the first time we first started Playgroups, why don't we put collars on every dog? Like, so all those little things along the way have just made us like, the program has grown and it's gotten better. But yes, we always, anybody that reaches out to us as far as like about coming to visit, anybody can come. We have no issue with that at all. And if they have questions, they can ask away. But we love love when people come and visit us.
That's awesome. I think collaboration among shelters is one of the most important things that we're doing. I think that's all the questions I had for you. Did you have anything else you wanted to share that you were thinking about sharing that we maybe missed?
Playgroups, every shelter that's not doing them, I tell people, I like to go to dog training seminars. That's like my hobby on the side. And people find out we're doing playgroups at the dog trainers. They're like, you seriously got your shelter to do that? How'd you do that? Because we try to get our shelters that we work with as private dog trainers to do these. And I'm like, honestly, it was management support and having a good team that's willing to back you up, and no matter how pushy you want to be. And not everything, but like with playgroups and stuff, I just said, like, I want to get these guys out to playgroup. Like, for example, one of the restrictions we had when we first started was, I think females had to be out for 2.5 weeks. We've gotten that down to 10 days. And so we're like, that's just too long. I'm like, I need to get these guys back into playgroup. Post-surgery. I'm so sorry. I didn't explain that. But it was getting like support along the way. And we started at the 3 days a week, and we saw that there was a benefit, even if you can only do every other day. I will tell you, there are some challenges with doing the every other day thing, is that, it was like doing a new startup every day. But as we grew, and even if you could only do those 3 days a week, we saw huge changes in our dogs just doing those 3 days a week. So even if you're only comfortable doing like 2 to 3 dogs, do 2 to 3 dogs. Just getting those dogs out daily or every other day to have that good running, romping, socialization period is so beneficial. And I will tell you, anybody that does it will see huge changes in their dog's population. I mean, like the quietness in the kennel, the calmness, the higher adaptability, the decrease in leash reactivity. I could just keep naming things that you'll see in these dogs. And this was all stuff that was secondary to us doing playgroup. We didn't think any of this was going to happen. We just thought we were going to make our dogs have a good time. Like, let's just do this and have fun. But all these secondary benefits have come along because of playgroup. And I will tell you, the best one is the quiet kennels and the better adoption matches. And getting these dogs out the door and having positive outcomes instead of having to make tough decisions when these dogs really weren't behavior dogs. They were just frustrated dogs.
Right. It sounds like this is super beneficial to staff and volunteers as well, because everyone wants to walk into a quiet kennel.
And adopters, right?
Yes.
Are they walking through your kennels?
We've had multiple people that have come from other shelters, just like that visited the greater Cleveland area. And they're like, you have the quietest kennel we have ever been in. And I'm like,
and there are 72 dogs on our main kennel floor.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that's great.
That is really great. Well, where can people check you guys out if they want to scope out your website and your socials?
Oh, yes. So we are Cuyahoga Dogs on Instagram. Of course, just Cuyahoga County Animal Shelter on Facebook, Cuyahoga Dogs on TikTok, and then our website is cuyahogadogs.gov.
All right. We'll put all those in the bio.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amanda and Mindy. I appreciate your time so much and everything that you guys have been doing. I'm very impressed with the trajectory of your success. So that's really awesome.
All thanks to Amy and her team.
Oh, yes. Believe me, follow them everywhere. I felt like we were these little people like minions that were following them around from shelter to shelter.
There was a lot of fangirling happening for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Same over here with DPFL. They do amazing work.
Columbus. Let's go visit them.
Now we're lucky we can call them friends.
Yes.
But yeah.
We love Dogs Playing for Life. And I will tell you, they did challenge us on multiple things. Like, okay, we're going to make something, like, things will be like that. We talked about earlier, like, every time we were like, oh, why are you doing this? They challenged us like, oh yeah, get these dogs out of the cage. Like I said, with the tying the dogs out, like, why are you doing that? So they challenged us every step of the way, but everything they challenged us to do and everything that we changed just benefited the dogs, benefited the staff, and benefited the volunteers and the public, because you can see the win-win with all the numbers. Better dog adoptions going out, but it was definitely, I said, we definitely pushed a little bit, and it wasn't easy in the beginning, but the benefit at the end, and obviously where we are today, has been so good for every dog that's come into our building. It is truly summer camp now for them. It's not like institutionalized correctional facility for dogs.
That's a great way to explain that changeover. One thing I really wanted to mention, and I totally forgot, is that the average length of stay for you guys, the numbers that Amy sent over was 4.2 days per dog on average is staying. So that's that is also
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys probably know, you follow Shelter Animals Account. We have had some rebound like this past year, like post-COVID.
Sure.
But our numbers still have like you can see them again. They're starting to track back like where we want them to be.
Yeah.
Last year was very challenging for us. We had, you guys know this, like dogs weren't moving as fast. They're moving again, a little faster than they were, but overall, yes, like the stay definitely has decreased. It was very long, a long time ago, and especially. It wasn't per se with, like, you guys know this, the little dogs. It was our big dogs that we were struggling with. And this is what the program, and I'm not saying it doesn't help our little dogs as well. They still love to go out and play and be little crazy little dogs. But the big guys, especially the ones that are here longest, are the ones that benefit the most. And we love when those ones that are been here a long time, especially when they get to enjoy and they're rock stars, they get to be out there for 2, 3, 4 hours. And like they're not being stuck in their kennels for 8 hours a day or the whole time that we're here for the day. They get to be out and play, and be dogs, which is like, it's a lot more normal to be out in a play yard than it is to be in a kennel for that many hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much again.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time.